Beauty.
Thank you.
You guys all still there?
Yeah.
Make sure I didn't lose everyone.
Guess watching language isn't no language at all, eh?
No, just don't say too many mean things.
Don't say anything disparaging about ditch chickens and such.
Time and a place for everything. Nothing wrong with ditch chicken.
Actually saw a video today on, I don't know, it was a
Down. Okay.
Facebook short or something like that. With a fox, it was a trail camera with a fox with a grouse in its mouth. I'd never seen, a lot of people always complain about, predators and grouse and stuff like that. But I mean, I think most grouse are probably killed by avian predators as opposed to, canine predators, et cetera. It was kind of interesting. Who knows? Was it dead beforehand? Did it catch it? It looked like a nice healthy grouse. It was like, oh, I've never seen them. That was the first time I've ever seen that before.
Yeah.
It's darn near as big as a fox.
Yeah, I'm sure if fox gets lucky every once in a while.
A few winters ago, I tied a grouse carcass to a leaning pole tree and put a trail camera on it because I was hoping to get some photos of a fisher or a martin. And I went back 2 days later, it was all gone, all eaten. And I figured, oh, great, I got something. And I had about 150 photos of a flying squirrel who completely gorged himself on what was left of that grouse.
Really?
Oh,
I couldn't believe it. I did not really think they were that opportunistic.
Huh. I've heard that those things are terrible nest raiders in the spring.
Mm-hmm. I wouldn't be surprised after seeing how he handled what was left of that grouse carcass.
Yeah, I never thought, I didn't think they were even carnivores, but I did know that they'll eat grouse eggs.
You ever see the video of the deer eating the birds?
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
Yes.
That's hilarious.
I got a couple friends that are just adamant that turkeys are the reason why grouse numbers are down in a lot of areas.
Yeah, I hear it all the time too. It's more correlation than causation.
Well, that's what I've always thought too. It's like I've never seen a lot of turkeys in my good grouse covers.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I have no doubt that if a turkey's out pecking through the woods and there's some little baby grouse running around, it's going to eat them. I mean, the turkeys and chickens will eat anything,
They're pretty opportunistic, absolutely, yeah.
But I find it hard to believe that they hunt them.
Not trying to spot burn the North Country or New York, but there's a pretty good grouse population and pretty good turkey population all across, I would say. You think so, Jesse? Pretty good turkeys, right?
Yeah, depending on where you are, it's just really, if you want grouse, you go to younger forest, go to younger habitat. Wait 10 years, you'll have turkeys. That's usually how it works up here.
Yep.
My good grouse covers turn into turkey cover after a while.
And I mean, Glenn, don't you think? I mean, most of our areas that have good grouse, it's just typically the winters can oftentimes be too rough to really sustain a huge, robust turkey population. I mean,
well,
are there turkeys there? Absolutely. But, a couple good winters can really wreak havoc on turkeys.
well, I mean, you don't want me to get started on that. If you look at and say invasive species, the natural line of turkeys in Michigan was US 10, which is an east-west major road that Larry lives on or near. Brent, Dave, and I know. So south of US 10, there were wild turkeys. North of US 10, there weren't wild turkeys.
Huh.
So we have put them everywhere that they weren't supposed to be.
I did not know that.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, were there ever eastern wild turkeys in Alaska? No, but there are now.
Yeah,
Were there ever eastern wild turkeys in Montana? No.
there are now.
So, and not taking anything towards turkeys, but if you look at where they were in Michigan, it was south of US 10 historically. You can look at Michon's book and a bunch of things that talk about that. So, you would never see them in Grayling or Roscommon or Gaylord or even the UP, where they're viable turkey populations. But especially in the UP, to get them through the winter, you got to feed them because they can't make it. Maybe this year they could,
Right.
because this year's such a anomaly, hopefully. But historically, they're not going to make it through a Grayling winter or a Gaylord winter or wherever. So
Yeah.
All right, we got a few people on. I'm gonna switch us over here and we can get going. Everyone's here. Jared, Lawrence, got you there. Yep, there you go. All right, everyone. Welcome to the Pyke RGS Live of March 2024. It's been a few months since we did this, so it's good to have everyone back on. And we got a pretty full lineup here tonight. So probably go through all of us, introduce who we are just so everyone can see, and then we can get rolling from there with kind of hitting some of the specific regions that we have represented here. So Glenn, go ahead. Why don't you start out and we'll kind of go around the horn here.
I'm Glenn Blackwood, Director of Development based out of Rockford, Michigan, work on the fundraising side of things. Want to thank all of you to be here tonight, especially as we kick off the 10th anniversary of AWS, the American Woodcock Society. We've got some really spectacular woodcock things going on throughout the country that some of our conservation delivery staff will talk to you about. Also want to thank our corporate sponsor in Pyke for allowing us to tag team on with them on their channel to do this, and mention our membership drive is going forward. If you want to join AWS or need to renew your membership, now's the perfect time. We've got some great promotional things going as well. So thank you all for coming. I'll shut up and turn it over to Brent.
I'm Brent Pyke, the founder of Pyke Gear. Happy to be here. Happy to be supporting RGS. I'm a longtime president of our local chapter. I resigned from that 2 years ago, but still a chapter member. And we had our meeting last night, getting ready for our banquet here in early May. So anybody from Michigan, or specifically Grand Rapids, Grand Haven, Muskegon, Holland, Ludington, etc., that want to go to a banquet, I believe it's Friday, either May 10th or May 11th. It is that Friday before Mother's Day. Love to have you come out and introduce yourself, and we'll have some cool giveaways at the American Dunes Golf Club here in Grand Haven, Michigan. And it's always a good time. We'll have some good food and got some good prizes to give away. So if you guys aren't members, please become members. If you are members, please come join us.
Larry, why don't you introduce yourself?
Gladly, I'll hop in there. So my name is Larry Partridge. I am our Forest Conservation Coordinator here in the Eastern Great Lakes. I'm based out of Chase, Michigan, so central, kind of west northern. And yeah, I work in conservation delivery. So I'm the guy kind of wrangling grants and putting conservation on the ground through administering projects, contract work, timber cutting, tree planting, alder shearing, kind of across the board through a variety of ownership types and partner groups. Yeah, a lot of work on the national forest, a lot of work with state game areas, and yeah, just growing our program here. So a lot of projects, a lot of irons in the fire right now. So
good.
I'll actually pass it over to my counterpart, Jared, across the lake over there.
Yeah, I'm Jared Elm. I'm the Wisconsin Conservation Coordinator for RGS. Similar to Larry, in Wisconsin right now, our kind of two primary programs are our private lands program. I'm new to this role for a few months, but for the past 6 years, I've been a forest wildlife specialist with RGS, in a partnership with the Natural Resource Conservation Service, helping private landowners in the northwest part of the state. I'm based out of Spooner. We have staff that cover the Northeast and then the Northern Driftless as well. And then we're also beginning our project with the Squamish-Nicolet National Forest with the short form stewardship to look at unsold timber sales with them. And then similarly helping with, scoping and planning with, all of our county and state forest landowners too.
All right, Jesse, we'll pass it over to you.
How do I'm Jesse Rock. I'm the wildlife forester up here in the northern New York State, but I am one of the two foresters in the Northeast region. Been with been with RGS going on 2 years now. I do the work that Jared discussed a little bit that he used to do. That's the same thing I do here. It's a cooperative agreement with the Natural Resource Conservation Service, helping private landowners improve their property for wildlife habitat. So I'll turn it back over to Dave.
Kevin?
Or Kevin, sorry, Kevin.
Yeah, we'll go to Kevin now. That's okay.
I'm Kevin Sterling. I work on the marketing team, and tonight I'm pinch hitting for the Mid-Atlantic and Southern Appalachian region. I have the pleasure of sitting on all the different regional calls so that I can communicate what's going on as effectively as we can. I'm not a scientist or a forestry professional, so hopefully I can give everything in layman's terms, which is kind of why I'm the fly on the wall in a lot of those calls.
All right, I'm Dave. I'm with Pyke Gear, and I'll be your moderator for tonight. Kind of hopefully MC things here and keep it moving. If you are joining us and you have questions, there's a chat going on the live. Feel free to drop questions on there, and I'll try to keep track of them. And as they kind of pertain to who's talking, we can have them answer those questions for you. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button on there and join our channel. We're going to do these lives a couple times a year like we've been doing. Plus we post, various videos on YouTube as we go. So make sure you subscribe to our channel. And also, if you haven't already, head over to the Pyke social medias and the RGS social medias and give them a follow too, because Kevin has been, I believe it's Kevin, kind of posting as they do some of these projects, keeping people updated through their social medias, which is helpful to see just what's happening around the country. So, I don't know where we want to get started here, Kevin. Who do we have first?
Well, sir, we talked a little bit about the drive and
we can start there.
Yeah, so right now we've got lots of stuff. Like basically it's the 10th anniversary of American Woodcock Society, so we really wanted to pull out all the stops. We've got model this hat here you might have seen on social media, but our buddies at Duck Camp made that pretty sweet embroidered hat that comes at every membership level. And then if you go up to the conservation level, that's like the dual, then you get the 2024 member shirt that features artwork from Jay Dowd, who's a phenomenal wildlife artist and just does an enormous amount for multiple conservation groups and has done stuff with Pyke before. And there's also Pyke gift cards at different levels. We also, for the first time, offer a wax cotton shell bag made by Duluth Pack. So without walking through all the tiers, it's a great time to join. This promos end midnight on Friday. So, don't delay.
We're getting toward the end here.
What'd you say?
We're getting toward the end here of that. So,
yeah, exactly.
If you've been waiting, get on that.
Exactly. We're in the home stretch. But really with 10 years of AWS, we can circle back into a lot of things here, but we basically just signed an MOU with Pheasants Forever, Quail Forever, and one of the things that kind of like is an area of emphasis that is expanding opportunities between quail and woodcock, like in the Southeast particularly, is probably where a lot of that is going to come into. So that's kind of like a new frontier for us.
Kevin, could you explain that a little bit more for me? I saw that, that was being plastered all over the place. And quite frankly, I didn't really know what it meant. And I'm kind of embarrassed to admit that, but I think that a lot of people in the general audience don't really probably knows what that means. So, I mean, if you could elaborate on that, I think that'd be a big plus for everybody.
Yeah, I know 100%. And that was one of the common questions we got while we were at Pheasant Fest. So simplest way to put it is it's kind of like a handshake. I was on a podcast yesterday and I said a lot of people are familiar on cop shows where like the FBI and the local police say like, you know, you call us, we'll call you. Like we're both kind of working the same place. So I think the way that we see it playing out is if they have a project opportunity that they think Woodcock might benefit, then they're going to call us and keep us in the loop. And maybe we work together on funding, or maybe we share staff or market, what's going on together. And likewise, as we kind of expand the woodcock habitat, a lot of that southeast is going to be quail country. And so it behooves us to keep them in the loop, so that, again, we're not like working in silos, but if there's an opportunity to cross over, that we would do that. So um, we're all really excited about it. We talked to a lot of the PF staff at Pheasant Fest, and it seems like it's something that they're excited about as well. So, um, I think we'll see where it goes from there. But a great way to start off the anniversary is sort of celebrating new expansion.
Is there anything specifically up front that has been discussed, as far as partnerships with that, or is it kind of a we're going to work on it as we go forward thing?
Yeah,
Well,
so I don't think anything has immediately started just yet. As you can probably tell, a lot of the work we have to do takes a little while to really get it moving. So that agreement just got signed like 3 weeks ago, I think. So it's really just in its infancy. I can say from our perspective, regardless of the agreement, we're looking for a forest conservation director in the Piedmont Coastal Plains region. So if you are a conservation professional looking to work in a leadership role within RGS, that's kind of the cornerstone role of all of our regions. So that person would then be responsible for building out the conservation team in our sixth region. So it's about as big of a move as we can make right now in terms of like moving into a whole new territory we haven't really done anything in before.
if I could jump in there, if you get on our website and you look at the Eastern Migration Woodcock Pass, you'll see that through telemetry in the past few years, we've really identified, or that study has really identified the importance of habitat, wintering habitat, early spring habitat in the coastal Carolinas, the Piedmont region, both in North Carolina and South Carolina. And this year we exhibited at SeaWe, the Southeast Wildlife Art Expo, for the first year. And it was just amazing the interest in American woodcock down there and the feedback that we got from that or received from the 2-3 days at SeaWe. So really reaching out in this MOU, the Memorandum of Understanding with Quail Forever, because they're down there looking at quail stuff, but we have a big wintering grounds of woodcock in that Piedmont coastal Carolina region. 30% of all birds off the telemetry study are in that region each year. So we want those hens as well as the males, but the hens to be well nourished, have great habitat. So on their migration back north, they're in a good position for gestation or brooding when they get back to wherever they're going, whether it's somewhere up the Northeast towards Jesse or the Great Lakes states, Michigan, where Brent, Dave, and I and Larry are, or into Wisconsin, Jared's territory, or Minnesota or beyond. So it's really kind of moving that needle towards not just providing habitat for October, but habitat for birds year round.
Good answer.
And whenever Glenn speaks, the mic just drops every time.
So I guess technically tonight we're specifically targeting woodcock. It's funny, I was just thinking when you said that it's 10 years. We did that what was it, the National Woodcock Hunt to kick it all off back in 2014 up in Gaylord there. it seems like yesterday. It does not seem like 10 years ago. That's a good time though. There's a lot of good people there, and I mean, there's still people that like that was the first. I mean, I'm trying to think. There's a few people. That was the first time I ever met them was at that. So,
Yeah,
I
that
just
was
got
um,
I got
which
my certificate. I have to take my class for woodcock banding certification on March 30th. So I'll be out banded woodcock last couple years as an apprentice with a few different guys. So I'm excited to be able to get out on my own this spring to do some of that, and hopefully again aid in some of the research of woodcock. I mean, they're a mysterious little bird.
And a couple of the things we also want to highlight, not just now, but throughout this year. We have a woodcock migration map on the website that will be more prominent, in the next couple of weeks as we kind of feature it. But basically, it's user-generated woodcock sightings. So you have the capability to put a pin on a map. It goes to the moderator to make sure you're not saying there's like one, whatever, in like France. And once we approve the pin, it shows up. It shows up on the map. It also has a time scale, so you can basically see like, okay, where were the woodcock 2 years ago, and then where are they like within this, 3-week period around now. So I'd encourage people to keep an eye out for that. And, again, we'll promote that. And the other thing is we kind of talked about telemetry. So one of the big things that we support is the Eastern Woodcock Research Cooperative. I'm sorry, Migration Research Cooperative that I believe is based primarily out of University of Maine, collaborating around a few other universities. But basically, they do banding and telemetry collaring and provide data for us like on almost a weekly basis, especially now and like throughout the migration. And so again, as we sort of like keep featuring woodcock related content, we're going to basically highlight what they do. A lot of times you might have seen on Instagram, Eric Blomberg puts out a post if you follow him on Instagram, but they do such amazing work and it's so diligent and thorough. We want to do our best to like highlight it. So, just keep an eye out for that too. And that's a great place to see how your support in RGS and AWS helps support organizations like that. And their website is woodcockmigration.org if you want to check it out too, which I would encourage everybody to do.
well, say that again, Kevin. What was it?
Woodcock
The website?
woodcockmigration.org.
I'm throwing that up in the chat. Kevin, Glenn kind of talked about, the when woodcock migrate south, it's kind of their stopover place. They're not nesting. Do you have any like specific information on what's happening in some of those southern regions?
Yeah, so so a couple of things, and somebody asked this the other day. In some of the coastal plains, like I'm going to highlight the New Jersey chapter of AWS. Um, People associate a lot of our work to be like timber driven, so like cutting timber to make the habitat. But on the Jersey Shore, like that's a critical migration pathway for woodcock, but like you're not cutting timber probably on the Jersey Shore. So a lot of what that chapter is doing is like planting to make sure that there's like desirable species like in that nesting habitat. So that's an example of like chapter that does phenomenal work.
What
And
kind
then
of, sorry, what kind of habitat do they have there? I'm guessing it's more of like stopover grounds in that area, isn't it?
yeah, so and again, if one of the other foresters wants to chime in on this, so I do know like Jersey Shore, you've got like the pine barrens is a big part of the habitat down there where the woodcock are probably passing through something that like traditional quail habitat and a woodcock stopover ground. So again, like something like that is an area where could be QF interested in that as well. I'm not completely familiar with anything that they're doing in New Jersey. But just that's kind of like an example of how that could play out. Um, Otherwise, just again, I have kind of like a cheat sheet from Southern Appalachian. Um, there's stewardship agreements that have been underway, like George Washington Jefferson National Forest, which I believe are going to be in Virginia, which includes burns. It's been timber cutting, just kind of like taking a quick thing here. So they've done forest stand improvements, and then worked on a combination of state and private lands adjacent to it. So I can make sure these resources are on the Southern Apps page. I've got quite a little document here of things like that. But so that's examples of that part of Virginia is going to be more mountainous, and so that's actually intended to benefit grouse and woodcock in doing that. And then just another quick snapshot. So I've got reports, Tennessee on the Cherokee National Forest, the Catoosa, private lands in Tennessee. Let's see, a couple other things. But again, I'm happy to post stuff like that. Does that add context to it?
Yeah. Just we don't have we kind of have a northern representation here tonight, just trying to get some fill in on what's happening for the people, because I know a lot of the AWS, from what I understood originally, was kind of formed for those more southern states where, they don't have rough grouse, but they do get woodcock, either in the migration or there as a whole, stopover ground. And so those chapters were kind of formed out of that desire from what I understood when they first put this thing together. So I'm just trying to get some idea for people if they're joining us from those areas on what's happening down that way.
Yeah, for sure.
Jesse, you want to give us kind of an update on what you're doing, what you're looking at and have going?
Yeah, sure. So, while most of the work I do is with private landowners, I do also work on public land projects. On the private land side, we've been able to help develop management plans and better habitat work on about 1,500 acres across the northern New York state. Actual implementation is lower as it takes time. But that's one of the nice things about working in more of the public land sectors is usually implementation can come along faster. So some of the larger projects we've worked on is last summer I helped work with the Finger Lakes National Forest. They're looking at doing a pilot project on about 300 acres, specifically targeting woodcock management. A lot of old overgrown pasture land and apple orchards that are going to be treated for invasive species and managed to create better regen, better quality cover for woodcock nesting, and also create openings for singing grounds and stuff. If that goes well, they have about 3,000 acres that they eventually want to move that treatment onto. So it's kind of a project we're getting our foot in, and then we're going to continue that hopefully over the next few years. Another project area we're working on is down near Albany, New York, is Partridge Run. This is a wildlife management area managed by the state, and it has a bunch of different pieces of state land and private land that all interconnect and mix with it. And we, excuse me, we funded for some work that normally wouldn't have been done. The state wouldn't have done it because it wasn't really practical. They didn't have the funding to have a contractor come in and get the work done, but we were able to hire out for that and assist with funding that work there. And we're currently looking to try and do more interconnected work with a lot of the private landowners in that region. Actually, I just this past week developed our first mailing list to everyone within about 10 miles of that site, and that is a couple of thousand acres that's interconnected within the Partridge Run Wildlife Management Unit itself, and then the state lands that are in close proximity. Yeah. But that's kind of the two of the bigger things going on. We also work on a much smaller scale in projects up along the Canadian border. We have some work with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service on properties they own, wildlife refuge property that is accessible to hunting. You'd never know it if you went there because it's got about 100 signs that say keep off, but it is open to the public.
Best spots to go.
Yeah.
All honesty, yeah. I snuck up there an afternoon this winter and got a one grouse flush 7 in about 20 minutes, and it was like, okay.
Who's posting that up? Who's posting it with do not enter?
Oh, the federal government is.
Really?
It's their normal refuge signage. It just comes across as extremely don't come here kind of is the language that it puts out, but it is perfectly legal and fine, and they're more than welcome to have hunters come to the property. We're actually We got funding to put in a hunting access parking area on that property and hopefully improve some of the trail systems and also do management. So I developed a management plan for them, and they're looking to do about 25 acres of aspen management on the property, plus some invasive species removal and some a lot of dogwood management work, which is really good for woodcock in our region. Yeah.
How do you manage dogwood?
So in our in our area, we have gray stem and silky stem dogwood. It's very clump in terms of its growth structure. So you'll start with a couple of shoots that get to about 5-6 foot tall, and then that expands out dramatically over a region, and it'll get to well over 1,000 stems per acre, usually 3 to 5 in terms of its density that it grows in. So we kind of rotationally brush hog it. So you won't take out an entire patch. You'll just kind of cut off a section here and there, because eventually it will grow up to a point where it ages out and starts to thin naturally. So in order to keep it really, really high density, we'll go in and selectively cut it all back in sections. That'll cause it to regen again.
Huh. Glenn, what do we have red osier and gray osier dogwood in Michigan, right?
Correct.
Do we do any type of management for that type of stuff in Michigan? I mean, the stuff I've been hunting some of that stuff for 20 years, and it's obviously never been managed, but I mean, it's full of grouse sometimes.
Well, sometimes it certainly is. I think when you look at all of these management aspects, and I'll defer to Larry and the rest of the RGS conservation staff, because I'm not a forester or biologist. Hell, I'm the dumbest person on this call. Y'all know that. But we as an organization, we need to focus on where we can get the biggest bang for our bucks. So if you look at, and not spilling the beans here, but we're working on a new Michigan wildlife habitat grant that's very woodcock centric in the UP. And we're looking at alder shearing and aspen management, which are the two big things that we have here in Michigan. Do we want to dilute our conservation practices? And I probably should shut up and let Larry take this question, because those are more, I don't want to say economical, but more effective aspects for the birds. Certainly, I think when you get into private landowners, there are private landowners out there that have seen dogwood, as Jesse said, get so big that it begins to wilt or die on its own and doesn't have that stem density that we all know and what the birds need to be productive habitat. So there are some private lands that are doing that, but in the big picture, I think we're focused more on aspen and alder at this time. But Larry, you might jump in and tell me I'm all wrong.
No, that's pretty much spot on. Like our dogwood component gets managed like in confluence with our forestry management, but dogwoods are our primary like planter species. So if we're doing supplemental habitat and forage plantings, dogwoods, the gray and the red are almost always going to be included in that. And then you look at our kind of our zone 3 southern woodcock work that we've done in the past, the opening, creation, and maintenance that we do on the state game areas, that from a high level, it's functionally just setting back the autumn olive. Like it feels like a lot of autumn olive invasive species management. But what we're doing with that is opening up, removing unideal species and making room for the filling in of the dogwood and those natural kind of medium brushy species. So while it's not our primary management objective, it always benefits from whatever management we put on the ground. So it's definitely a component of what we do, but definitely not. It's not kind of our keystone to any of our management approaches.
Speaking of autumn olive, Larry, if we found anything that's effective in stopping that stuff, I mean, we've got some local game areas here in Grand Haven that, used to be a very dogwood component that have just been overtaken by autumn olive. And, I mean, certainly it holds woodcock in spring, but Not like it did 20 years ago when I first started, running dogs in there. I mean, now it's just, I mean, it's impenetrable, and it's obviously it's full of ticks when you get all that extra autumn olive in there. It just seems to hold ticks more than anything else I've ever seen. But is anything we can do to slow the autumn olive?
I mean, we all know how heavily the state and various organizations were invested on getting brushy landscape trees on the ground 30, 40, 50 years ago. And autumn olive, honestly, is a fantastic habitat tree. It's just so damn aggressive. It chokes out all of our native species, and it just becomes a monoculture.
Yeah.
The only way to get rid of it is cut it and treat it heavily with chemicals. Better living through chemistry. But in the end, it's all over the countryside. So if you treat it in one site, you've got it pretty prolific in the next site over, and it's a prolific cedar, and birds carry it. So it's going to be the rest of our lives fighting it back. But it's if you can on a particular site get ahead of it, then it's maintenance treatments, it's lower effort entries, but it's I don't see any end to it. It's just kind of wherever we can getting on top of it and then staying ahead of it on our priority grounds.
I remember a few years ago when we had that really, really, I think it was 2013, 2014, we had that really bad winter. And that really knocked the snot out of a lot of that autumn olive for a couple of years. I mean, killed a lot. I mean, at least set it back years, I mean, so clearly that, a winter like we just had is probably not real good for controlling it. But,
controlling anything.
A couple good winters in a row would do a lot, I would assume.
Yeah, like Glenn mentioned that when he was talking about turkeys, that kind of corridor of Highway 10 is kind of the tension zone, and you've got your more northern species north of it and your more southern species south of it. And if the winters keep up the way they are, I mean, the occasional good winter is good for us, but I see autumn olive becoming more of a problem more north and continuing to be a problem south as long as these climactic patterns maintain.
Yeah.
But the grouse love
and while I got the horn, it really is a good wildlife tree. It's
grouse do love it.
It's just too good.
Grouse love it.
Yeah.
I don't care how invasive it is. If there's autumn olive, I'm gonna target it.
Yeah. And Dave, I see you got in the chat while I got the horn here. People are curious about
I'm
work to be done.
Yeah, habitat grant, especially zone 3. There's I don't know if you're on Facebook, but there's been a lot of discussion going around today about zone 3 habitat work.
I try to avoid
grants.
the socials.
Yeah. Might be a good idea.
As far as I can tell, it was just some information didn't get conveyed. And overall, our strategy right now for our zone 3 work, we've been really successful working with the Michigan Habitat Grant Program. And it gives us roughly enough money to give us 2 years of work every time for a 2-year cycle, like a 2-year grant. So right now we did one. Well, we applied for one 3 years ago. We applied for one last year, and our plan is to apply for one next year. And it's going to be kind of perpetual work pretty much every season.
Okay.
And we're already working. Classically, we've kind of scrambled every year to work with these property managers to come up with work. But right now, I'm working with them to establish more 5, 10, 20-year plans of like, okay, so we're working on this site now. What does our re-entry cycle look like? And how do we start to plan for that now? So say in 2028 or 2030, we plan on coming back to this property with more of these grant projects. So we're really just trying to work with these property managers and make sure that we're appropriately planning with them and scheduling the work on time. And right now, every other year on a 2-year grant is kind of our approach, because I'm working with all of Michigan. We're trying to work in everybody's backyard as much as we can. We just wrapped up the end of a 2-year project on the Hiawatha, and I'm right now working on another project that includes some work in the Hiawatha. We got our ongoing work on the Pere Marquette and the Huron Manistee, and quite a bit of work and a lot of work coming up in the future on the Pigeon River Forest. Partnership with the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation. They are partnering with the Ruffed Grouse Society because they don't really have any staff to do any elk work east of the Mississippi. They're really a Western-based organization. And because of the overlap of habitat types, they are working with us and directly funding us. It's I think $100,000 a year to focus on our 4 elk regions: Pennsylvania, Kentucky, Michigan, and Wisconsin. So next year we're going to be coming to the table to try to get grant match with $50,000 in hand for additional Pigeon River work.
Yeah, I know it's
Oh yeah.
kind of a thing today. Just what's happening, people wondering where their money is going and want to know, those grants obviously do incredible things for the money raised, and as far as multiplying it and getting the work done. So I think that's important for people to hear for sure.
Yeah. And some of this work is seasonal. A lot of it, especially the timber work, if we're trying to regenerate aspen, it's only winter season. So this past winter season, we were administering work up on the Hiawatha. And this coming season, there's going to be SGA work, the timber sale for our stewardship plan, and quite a bit additional non-commercial felling that is going to be going out on contract within the next couple months. But trees won't be falling until next winter. And again, conditions, finger crossed.
So a follow-up question that just came through is also, I mean, obviously you're working with Michigan. Do you do Indiana, Ohio as well?
A little bit. I'm helping.
Okay.
We don't have any active conservation staff in those states. We have some mixed active chapters, both for Ruffed Grouse and Woodcock Society, and we're kind of with each state we work with, it's a different landscape and we kind of have to tailor each approach to each. That we end up working with a lot of governmental agencies, NRCS, the state. And so right now we're in conversations with the Wayne National Forest and just kind of exploring our options, looking at how we can get people on the ground down there. But right now we don't have any active kind of organizational conservation work going on in those areas yet. But
Gotcha. Okay.
We're growing leaps and bounds, so I expect to see some in the future.
Okay, yeah, that came up too. Not only Zone 3 Southern Michigan, but obviously, birds don't know a border, right? So they
do not respect borders.
Yeah, they have no clue what a border is. So Indiana, Ohio, obviously important to that ecosystem too, because it's kind of shares what we see down here. And if the other states aren't working with us, it almost seems like they'd be working against us here. So, yep, that's actually a good point, because I know you don't really think about that, but there are birds everywhere.
Yeah,
and they're gonna move around.
I know the Ohio DNR kind of came up with, this was a conversation we were having last year. They kind of identified West Nile virus as like the biggest thing that they need to try to attack as far as benefiting the grouse population and the bird populations. So we're really on board with habitat is the thing that we can affect the most. We can't really do much about a virus, but we can positively affect the habitat. And I think we're still in talks at another tier higher than me to try to develop some partnerships with organizations in those states to kind of find a collaborative approach so we can get in there and do some work.
Yeah, I think there's been a couple questions coming through here about Zone 3. That's really it for Michigan. I guess we could throw it across the lake to Jared for now. And we can come back to other questions as they arise. But Jared, why don't you tell us what you got going on over there?
Sure. Probably the most novel thing that we have going on in Michigan or in Wisconsin is a short form stewardship agreement with the Chequamegon Nicolet. And we're basically looking at some unsold timber sales that total about 1,800 acres of unsold timber, kind of in 2 different blocks. One is kind of in between Clam Lake and Mellon for the Wisconsinites, and then the other is a block called East Moose, which is mostly in Ashland County and some in Sawyer County. And basically we're developing a matrix to evaluate why these sales went unsold, if it's the type of timber, if it's how the timber is marked, if there's access issues, and then basically develop a report with recommendations of how to potentially move this management forward. And then, the ultimate goal is to then have a long-form stewardship agreement with the National Forest to help them sell that timber once we evaluate why it's unsold. We're kind of in the very early stages of that, but things are going well. Hoping to have a bid out for consultants to look at the timber here soon. We also have 2 integrated habitat biologists with the Wisconsin DNR. And we have Sam Lau in Hayward, Wisconsin. We have Jim Woodford in Rhinelander, Wisconsin, kind of doing a lot of different things, ultimately adding capacity to DNR in those areas, helping with some private lands work, but also helping with public land. Probably the one of the more exciting things out of that so far is Jim and Rhinelander developed some GIS tools to evaluate age class diversity and ruffed grouse habitat on public lands. Part of that, Jim and Sam compiled where we have ruffed grouse management areas within the state of Wisconsin. Quite frankly, it's not been very well documented in the past where we have ruffed grouse management units on both the state and county forests. So they compiled as well as they could, all of them that have been dedicated for ruffed grouse management. And then basically we're running this GIS tool to evaluate how successfully we've been, diversifying the age classes in those ruffed grouse management areas. And now they're getting to the point where we're making changes to those public land plans to increase age class diversity and identify, unique challenges or opportunities on those blocks. And then also we have our private lands program. So we cover the entire northern forest, working with private landowners, do it with the partnership with NRCS to do a wide variety of things on public land, whether it's, aspen management, oak regeneration work, alder shearing, you name it. We writing plans and helping landowners get funding to do work on private lands. We also have a forester that just started in the northern drift list, and then also hoping to add one in central Wisconsin to help landowners as well. So that's probably the quick synopsis of what we've got going on.
Nice. Kevin, I know you're kind of fielding questions for those not here tonight. Is there a region that we've missed and haven't talked about here?
Just a little bit on the Mid-Atlantic.
Okay.
So that covers Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Maryland, West Virginia. And so just a couple of things they wanted me to highlight in PA. They actually have a little quick sheet that I think, if it's not on the website, they've been handing it out at events. In Lehigh County, they did the grouse tracks cutting project. It was 78 acres harvested to create early successional habitat. Lebanon and Schuylkill County, they did an ATV trail construction project. Looks like 200 acres of regeneration and 100 acres of non-commercial thinning. And then last spring, I don't know if it was pretty cool photos that we were able to get in videos. Tioga State Forest, we participated through investment in construction of a fire line in Tioga State Forest. So that was pretty cool. We got a lot of nice prescribed fire footage. It was drummer funds actually. So thank you to local chapters for helping support that, and worked with the Pennsylvania Bureau of Forestry. The model, which we haven't really talked on this call, but the model in Pennsylvania and a lot of other states implements what's called a DFRB. So that's a dynamic forest restoration block. And basically what they'll do is look at a large landscape of state, federal, private, hunt clubs, whatever, as like one large pack of land, and try and make a cohesive management plan based on what they're able to accomplish within willing parcels, kind of in that. So PA, as an example, they have 319,700 acres that are belonging to 31 units across PA. And so I don't know if there's a way I can screen share, but oh, sorry. So anyway, like we have the maps on our site, but basically you'll see like three giant masses in like southwest central PA, central PA, and northeast PA, like along the Delaware River Gap area, and that's comprised of state game lands and federal property and private property, and that same concept's actually spilling over the Delaware River into the Hudson Valley where I live. So like Jesse was talking about Partridge Run, but then further west there's like Mongaunt WMA in New York where I live, which is managed by the Northeast team, but same concept. They're basically working on blocking a lot of parcels of land together to create a management structure and funding mechanism that would allow us to accomplish, what we want within our mission. As far as New Jersey, again, like a lot of what's happening there is wonderful chapters that are doing AWS work, where there's not like such an appetite for us to do any kind of timber things there, but we support those guys as best we can. So certainly a shout out to their, leadership and dedication. In Maryland, I believe we were just setting up some things with like their forestry departments to gain access. Like if you actually look on the Mid-Atlantic regional page, we have some things out in Western Maryland in the Panhandle. And then in West Virginia, there's like, I believe, around some military installations, we have some projects. And I think I've heard some things about sort of like the strip mining restoration, where, basically like that's kind of like a blank slate where once it starts growing, it's actually kind of nice woodcock habitat once that brushy stuff starts coming in. So again, I wish I had a more specific report on those other states now, but check out the regional page and you can certainly see what's going on there.
I don't know if I just posted a question down on the chat there. I don't know if Glenn or Larry, if you want to, we're getting a lot of questions from Michigan here.
I'll chime in because I know this is Joe
Okay.
Schwenke. He's just trying to torment me.
Man, Joe, you just got called out.
Larry, before you chime in, let me say this.
Go ahead.
The biggest shock for me, and people from Michigan who know my pedigree or past, the biggest shock to me when I joined the organization was the lapse in understanding forestry management and the time that it takes to execute. So the question was something like, from when we sign an agreement, how long does it take? And the short answer is, and I'll let Larry go on this or anybody else, but if we put out a piece of property for bid for timbering, there's basically a 90-day period where people can go through, cruise it, look at it, come back. Then they've got another time frame that they have to submit their bids until we let the contract. And if we let the contract, most of the contracts it has to be harvested within 36 months. And if you think about what's best for aspen and best for the environment with machinery and everything else, everybody wants to cut in the winter. So there's arguably a 3.5 to 4 month or 4 year lapse from the time we start to the time that it's actually cut. And that was really eye-opening to me. And then going back to, what we talked about earlier, we have to manage our constituents, our donors, our members' money the best that we can. And we do have to spread the wealth. Unfortunately, we can't fund every project that's out there. That's why we're looking at the UP this year, both Eastern and Western. And we're going to let the Southern Zone 3 that we've funded for the past 3 years to set for a year and then come back to that because of funding. But it's a very, very slow process, especially when you start talking about non-commercial work where alder shearing, or Brent talked about dogwood with Jesse, where there's no economic value. You're just paying somebody to create habitat, to shear those alder rods. So instead of them being 20, 25 years old, we start to get regrowth. And in the next couple, 3 years, woodcock and birds will come back into them. And that's the great thing about woodcock in this membership, migration towards membership, our membership drive focusing on AWS and woodcock is they're, they're almost that instant gratification species. Within 12 to 18 months, woodcock are going to be using that young successional growth habitat, that young habitat that we're creating. So I'll shut up now, let Larry answer it in a more forestry conservation minded fashion.
Well, and specific to our projects, I would have ideally liked to have had trees on the ground in the Huron Manistee for our stewardship project, but due to me kind of stepping into this role already with that project underway, we didn't even start to get paint on the ground till July. And I'm probably overly conservative in our relationship with the Forest Service. But there's been some back and forth, and by the time we were in a spot where we could probably send it out, we were too late in the season to actually get it done this year. So we just opted to hold off and go after it the next season. Because again, these are seasonal restricted projects. They got to be done. A lot of our alder work needs to be done on frozen ground. So we were just entirely out of a lot of our alder and brush shearing for this season. But yeah, next year, I mean, conditions may still be limiting, but we will have almost all of our projects on contract, except for the new one, assuming we get it, that we're putting in for shortly. But right now we are actively partnered, working in Zone 3, funded for just shy of $100,000 to do SGA work this coming year. We didn't get approval for that funding. We applied for it earlier last year. We don't get approval until the end of August, early November. So it kind of loses us a little bit of a winter season, but everything is getting set up right now and fully prepared to be contracted out this spring for harvest this following season. But again, it works on a time scale. All of our contractors are planning work out 2 years in advance. So we're really not likely to get work on the ground if we put a contract out in October. So it's coming along. And I see a question about the drummer fund. I don't know, Glenn, do you want to take that one? Because I could touch on it.
Well, you could start us off, Larry.
Yeah, we do have a healthy drummer fund here in Michigan. And part of that is for the last, 4 grant cycles between our federal grants and the state grants, we've been incredibly effective at leveraging these funding sources against that funding sources to cover our grant requirements. So we're not even bringing a penny to the table. But then a lot of our other projects, we have some very generous private donors who are willing to come to the table with money and direct fund those projects. I know our current Zone 3 project was very aggressively fundraised for by our own John Page, and he just went out and asked for money for this project and direct raised pretty much the entire project himself. And when it comes to, I guess, responsibly using these, or like your funds, your donations, this organization's donations, I kind of look at it, if I can use outside sources of money or appropriate leverage of grants where we don't have to spend money, that's the first place I'm going to go. And then I'm going to work with our chapters and the local chapters to the work and see if they want to direct fund it. And then that's my second step. And my third step is then dipping into the drummer fund. And we haven't really needed to get to that third step in the last 3 years, which is a good problem to have. And right now we are in the process, end of the month, we'll be sitting down and we we're still growing, and we don't have a really well-defined business plan for Michigan yet. So that's one thing we will be working on this spring and into the summer. And we really want to have a plan to most effectively utilize these funds.
Yeah, I think the big question, just from what I'm seeing in general, is, we have this drummer fund here in Michigan, and maybe Glenn, this is more of a question for you. It's actually probably more for our RD, but just in general, the drummer fund's there and is generally directed by the membership, and what is happening to ensure that that is happening, so that, obviously people are putting these banquets on, raising money. How is that money then being decided where it gets spent, especially on the home front? I think is what the biggest concern people have.
Well, yeah, I think historically speaking, Michigan did it different than all the other states that were out there, in having that habitat meeting that was the Saturday before the Super Bowl, and everybody had projects that they wanted to fund, and we never had enough money to do it, and we gave some money here and some money there, and nobody walked away really happy. And I think the last one of those was right prior to the pandemic, before I was even hired. I believe Ben and Brent Rudolph ran that one. When we changed the model, right, wrong, or indifferent, when we changed the model to trying to leverage these funds for projects and the large scale habitat work that we're doing, so instead of doing $10,000 here or $15,000 here, trying to do a $150,000 project. Or in the case of, just Larry said, what we're going to do this year as part of the grant process of last year, $100,000 of woodcock habitat in the southern portion. We need those dollars to leverage, so if we can kick in 15,000, we get 150. And I'm not trying to not answer your question, but it is, where is the biggest bang for the buck on these large scale landscape projects that we're trying to do there? And it's going to take buy-in from all of us. Like I said, this year hopefully we'll get the grant that Larry's been working on, and we'll do $150,000 worth of work in the UP. I think everybody would love to say that we did $150,000 of work in the UP, but we can't, unfortunately, given capacity and scale and all the parameters, do that $150,000 and another $150,000 in the Huron Manistee and another $150,000 at this time. And that's my job, is to come up with the donors and the funding. So hopefully in the next 10 to 12 years, we're not talking about just one of these projects, but we're talking about multiple projects across the landscape. So that's where we are now. We're trying to leverage all of our members' dollars for the biggest buck, whether it's through a wildlife habitat grant in the state or partnering with the Federal Forest Service out there to make the large impact, because science and what everything comes back to when we're talking about grouse and woodcock, as well as all the neotropical songbirds, all the other habitat or wildlife that benefits from this, is its large landscapes. All you have to do is look at the Grayling area and look at all the jack pines that are up there for Kirtland warblers. If Kirtland warblers could survive in a 500 in a square mile, 640 acres, we wouldn't have jack pines to go the same way. It's the same principle with grouse and woodcock. We need these large landscapes. In order to do that, we need large scale projects, not just, and again, I come from the volunteer background. I'd love to do a 25-acre project in the Rogue River State Game Area, 25 minutes north of my house. But is that the most impact for our dollars that we can do versus one of these large scale projects? So I don't know if Jared or anyone else wants to jump in, but I think that's it. It's a change of philosophy. It's a change of mindset. It's understanding that one, it takes dollars, and two, it takes time, and three, we're out there working every day. You know, we had.
I think looking at it from my perspective, I think communication is key, and just, you know, and again, that's part of what Kevin does, and maybe even just what we do here. John does here in our state, at least, is communicating with the chapters what's happening, timelines, stuff like that. I think that would help people a lot. Just from what I'm gathering, I know there's probably more specific zone questions, but I think communication, to me, just even what you said there, if people are hearing that on a quarterly basis or whatever, it seems like that would help people understand what you're saying.
And I think if you look at, and I would say in my tenure, 3.5 years, the bellwethers got much better. The regional pages, we're trying to implement that, but it still comes back to, when you look at where the bulk of our money goes, it's on the ground habitat work, and raising those funds so we can do that. So
Glenn, not to interrupt you, but I think, you know, as a longtime chapter president and somebody who, you know, has helped raise, you know, probably over $250,000 worth of money for RGS, just as a chapter person, what people don't understand, and I try to explain this to a lot of people, it's like, we are a small organization. We need to grow our membership. If people want to see meaningful impact, you know, on the ground, et cetera, et cetera. And I think we've done a great job with what we have, but we need to double our membership. And that means, I mean, how many rough grouse guys or how many guys do you go out grouse hunting with? I mean, me personally, I'm embarrassed by the guys that aren't members. You know, oh, well, they don't do enough for this, or they don't. I'm like, listen, you know, RGS is a great organization. They're imperfect like every other organization out there, but, you know, they work hard, and we need more people and more voices. If we could double our membership, how much more sway do we have in Washington, D.C.? How much more sway do we have in Lansing? How much more sway do we have in Madison? I mean, all these different, you know, states, you know, when we have a larger membership, that helps drive our voice. I mean, share of voice is a big deal. And when people say, you know, oh, you've only got a couple thousand members in Michigan, they don't care as much. I mean, so, you know, even if it's only $35 that you join, that's your number does count. I mean, we prefer you to come to a banquet and spend a couple $100, but, you know, just being a member counts. It does count. So, I mean, shame your buddies. I mean, I'm preaching to the choir. Everybody that's on this call is an RGS fan, or, you know, they might have some gripes, but at the end of the day, they believe in the end of the mission. But the best way to change what we're looking at doing is to get more people and to drive this stuff out. And that's the only way to do it, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, it's, you know, money talks and BS walks. And that's, you know, unfortunately the world we live in now. I mean, if, you know, money's the answer now, what's the question?
And again, membership and we're growing again. I think, you know, all conservation organizations had a plummet there at the pandemic, but we're growing again. And that's why we're doing this membership drive. That's why we're out here tonight. And we have, you know, the staff members that we have on here and our corporate sponsors of Pyke, I mean, Brent can sit here and say everything that he wants, but he still supports us in spades in multiple venues, not only with his checkbook. And that means a great deal to the organization. But we do have this membership drive going. If you're not a member, we'd ask you to reach out and become one. You'll get a J. Dowd Michigan Artist Woodcock t-shirt with the Pyke logo on the sleeve. Depending upon the level that you go, the hat that we showed you earlier. And you will help our conservation footprint, not only in Michigan, but across everywhere that the birds are, from the lake states to the west of here, to the northeast, to the wintering grounds for woodcock in the coastal Carolinas, Alabama, Georgia, Texas, Louisiana, and everything in between. So thank you for joining us tonight. I know we're getting close to time. So
yeah, we're probably I know there's probably a lot more questions here that have come up that we could answer, and maybe we can continue those in the chat of the live going forward. Yeah, thank you guys for the information. Again, just even hearing it here tonight really helps, kind of paint a picture of what's happening. And I think a lot of people don't see all the working parts of it, but having these kind of discussions really helps with that. We do.
Any pressing questions, Dave?
Yes. No, a lot of it was kind of along the same lines.
Dave, could I comment really quick?
Yeah, go for it, Kevin.
Yeah, so I definitely want to thank people for just bringing up things. Like at the end of the day, my job is to fix things that are problems and to head off problems and anticipate problems. So one of the reasons, like you said, we do things like this is so that we can, try and be transparent about what's going on. I was a member before I worked for RGS, so when I came into it and basically had carte blanche to design things and implement them, I said, hey, I don't know what's going on in my region. Let's make a regional page. I don't know where my local chapters are. Let's make a chapter map. I don't know where the projects are. Let's make a project map. So on a call like this, like my mind's spinning, okay, how can we make communication more effective? Just like a month ago, I was looking at the project map and said, oh yeah, we can actually make it a lot simpler to implement this and understand where the projects are and what their status is. So again, like it's rolling out in the next couple of weeks, an easier way to look at every project that like has been grant funded, is in progress, all those things. So as heated as it seems to be sometimes, like in my mind, it's like these are just problems to fix, and our job is to fix problems. So again, I appreciate everybody who's forthright, and I think we all try to do what we can to make sure that this is like fantastic. And we do punch above our weight is what a lot of people tell us. And I hope that we're able to get more members so that we have a little bit more mass to back it up. So yeah, thank you.
Someone just commented they like this format and would love to see more of this, even if it's not us Pyke involved, just RGS, hosting ways for people to communicate and ask questions and get feedback from their local representatives. I think that's probably a big thing.
The Mid-Atlantic is kind of leading the organizational charge on seemingly a nice system that we're trying to analyze and implement into the others. So they have tapped habitat chairs in every chapter who basically have a tight liaison with the national team. And then those people become the basically communicators to the local staff. So last spring, Mid-Atlantic did like regional call. And then a few months later, they did a state specific call. And then now they've broken it into like local habitat calls. And the goal is members, chapter leadership, they're going to know what's going on because the habitat chairs know. And that role of that habitat chair is to know what the status is of projects, what's on the horizon, and basically what's going on. So again, that seems to be working really well in the Mid-Atlantic, and we're basically trying to implement that across the other regions.
Yeah, I mean, I when I joined RGS back in 2010, 2010, I guess, 2011. Yeah, we had a habitat chair then. So maybe that is something that the chapter should be kind of following that model going forward. I think that would actually probably be really good for just keeping a good line of communication between headquarters and the local members. All right, we're going to keep this moving unless someone has anything else they want to kind of add in here at the end.
The
We
last
do have
thing I would say, Dave, is if anybody wants to contact anyone on staff, you can find our emails on our webpage, but the easiest way is all the RGS emails are the same. It's the first letter of the first name, the last name at roughgrousesociety.org. So mine's G Blackwood at roughgrousesociety.org. Larry is L Partridge. Jesse is J Rock. Kevin is KS. So if you think of that, it's roughgrousesociety.org spelled out. But you can reach all of us, and all of us will love to talk and answer any questions that you have. And if you want to talk to us in person, our numbers are on the webpage. So,
and for any people that are new to grouse hunting and want to become more involved in grouse hunting, find your local chapter and go to some meetings. I mean, you'll meet some great people that are extremely passionate about grouse and grouse hunting, and you may find some new hunting partners. I mean, it was a gateway for me to find a lot of great new guys to go hunting with, and I'll forever be grateful for what RGS provided me as a bird hunter, is as far as just meeting new people. So, I mean, if you're looking to do new, if you're looking for new hunting partners and looking for new experiences, go to your local meetings and find out what's going on and help out. And it's a give and take game, guys and gals.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't know anyone on this call if it wasn't for RGS. I mean,
right.
Obviously but I mean, I wouldn't know Brent. I wouldn't know Glenn. I met everyone through RGS. So
right. I got a ton of it. Fritz and Rick Heller, Scott Grush, Dave, Sandy Myceris, Mike LaRue. I could name 50 people that I've met through RGS that I consider close, dear friends now because of the things that RGS has done. So, I mean, it's if you complain about it, make it better, because there's a lot of, I mean, every organization can be better, and the only way it gets better is with involvement, not bitching.
That's right. All right. Well, it is that time of night. We're going to do a giveaway. So we have trivia, as we always do, kind of our tradition on these things. And hopefully there's enough people on here that want to try to answer these questions. So we have a couple woodcock ones tonight, maybe a grouse one. We'll see. I don't know how many giveaways we want to do, but so for those that are still here, this is an interesting piece of trivia that hopefully you don't cheat in Google, but it would probably take you some time even if you did to find the answer. And even the guys on this call from RGS didn't have the answer earlier. So our first question of the night is,
wait. Let's preface this. Let's give people a little bit of background instead of just throwing the question out there. Let's give people maybe just a touch of background. So Dave and I and Glenn are personal friends with Al Stewart, who is the longtime upland game bird biologist for the state of Michigan. Al has been involved with sharptail relocation, rough grouse relocation, woodcock migration. He's actually down in Louisiana right now doing a wing bee survey. I mean, he's been retired from the DNR for a year and a half, and this is what he does. So, I mean, the guy knows everything. And Dave and I have done a couple hunts up on High Island and Garden Island over the years, which is in the northern Michigan Beaver Archipelago. And this is where some of the information came from. So now I will let Dave go on with the question.
I'm starting with the woodcock one.
Okay.
We'll do the grouse. We'll save the best for last on the grouse one. But yes, some of this information did come from Al Stewart. The first one I actually had to do some research on. So the first one's woodcock related. And the question is, this is a pretty recent study with GPS tracking. So this isn't, speculation. This is recorded data. What is the longest recorded woodcock flight in a single flight? So it's not like what did they do over the whole migration. This is how far is the longest recorded woodcock flight in a single flight. So throw your answers in the chat. We'll get a bunch on there and see who comes closest, because it's actually pretty astonishing. And then there's going to be maybe a bonus question to that one, but we have two main questions here. So go ahead and answer that.
What are we giving away, Dave?
We got what do we got? What are we? You tell me what we're giving away.
No. I'm going to throw this out to you. I'm going to let you, as our creative director here at Pyke Gear, decide what we give away.
All right. So this first one, this one's 100.
Right on.
We're doing $100 gift card on this one. Closest without going over. Yeah. It's coming out of my paycheck. It's okay. I can donate to the cause. No, this was closest without going over. How far is the longest recorded woodcock flight in one flight? We've got everything from 150 miles to 1,500 miles. Everything in between. Let's see who goes closest. We'll get a few more in here. They're rolling in quick. Somebody's trying to Google it. The slow ones are out there on Google trying to figure it out right now. I didn't give specifics.
If you Google it, you're a loser.
Yeah, I didn't give specifics on where the study was done, because that would make it easier to Google. It's actually pretty hard to find. We've got a couple close. Man. Oh, someone's playing the Price is Right game here on me, so they might win it. All right, we're gonna get a couple more. What were your the guys on the call here? Jared, Jesse, what were your guys' guesses before?
I don't think I put one in on this one.
Oh, okay.
I came in
like 300
miles.
miles.
300, yeah. No, I mean, I think I had heard 400 at some point, but again, this is recent with actual GPS, so a little more accurate results than just guessing with telemeters and all that stuff. All right, we've got a good host of answers here. So the actual number that was recorded, and I believe it was 2018 or 19, it was hard to tell. The study started in 2017 and continued for a couple years. The answer is 630 miles in a single flight, which for a little bird is actually pretty incredible.
So how far is 630 miles? I mean, that's got to be like, let's say the bridge to what, southern Indiana? And
I didn't map it out. I was trying to look at some maps and see where it was, and it flew from up like New York way down. I don't know if it was Tennessee or Kentucky, like kind of flew a little bit west like that.
Couldn't get out of New York fast enough.
Yeah, can't we all?
So Brent, it's 9 hours in your Suburban doing 70 miles an hour. That's what it is.
Our winner playing the Price is Right game. Let me just make sure he's correct. Is Scott Dons? He guessed 601 miles over the 600-mile guesses that were on there.
Pretty good guess, Scott.
Yep. So Scott Dons, if you're still listening, you're gonna shoot me an email with your information to dave@pykegear.com, and we'll get that gift card out to you. There was a lot of answers actually pretty close. There's one 689, 700, 600. Yeah, I mean, I personally never really heard of one going over 400. Now, I'm not going to throw this out as a trivia, but if anyone wants to guess, what's the highest recorded altitude that a woodcock has hit in its migration? This isn't necessarily sustained flight. This is just the highest point. This won't be the trivia, but go ahead and throw that in there if you think you know the highest altitude a woodcock has been recorded flying. This is in the same study, so it was with GPS, and they kind of have an accurate reading on it. But we'll go on to a second one. What do we do on this one, Brent? Let's give away.
Let's do the boat flying trivia.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing. What are we giving away for this one? For the
let's give another $100 away.
Another $100. We're doing another $100 gift card. All right. Okay, Scott. Hopefully you're sending me your email. You said thank you. Okay. So yeah, while I'm reading this, go ahead and guess your highest altitude. But this is the boat. So in 1968, this is pure Al Stewart trivia here. In 1968, the DNR decided they wanted to find out how far a ruffed grouse could fly because there was really no way to measure that on land and whatever. So up near Beaver Island, Michigan, up in Lake Michigan, they caught a bunch of grouse and they took them out in a boat and they started progressively getting further away from shore and releasing the birds one at a time to see how far they would fly towards shore. And they finally got to the point where one dropped in the water. How far? This is going to be a little more approximate. We're going to go how far in yards. Again, this is yards, not feet or anything like that. How far in yards was the farthest recorded flight of a ruffed grouse? Go. Again, way farther than you'd ever think a ruffed grouse could fly.
I've heard many guys, specifically field trial guys, say that, you know, when they flush a grouse, if they see the direction it goes, they're within 100 to 150 yards of where they flush.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I would even think 300 yards would be a really far flush.
Yes.
But let's see what people get here. This is in yards. How many yards?
This is flying for your life too. This is a little different than just, you know, I want to get the hell away from this coyote or this hawk. I'm like, holy cow, I'm going to die if I don't fly.
Also, this is 1968 and we don't condone this behavior. No one agrees with this study nowadays, but
all grouse were rescued and returned safely to shore.
We're going to debut that next week. I guess we'll have to kibosh that program.
We'll tell them about the horses next, right, Brent?
Yes.
All right, answers are coming in here. What do we? I gotta see. Yeah, we're getting some actually closer than I think people would have guessed. This is going to be the closest. This is going to be closest without going over also. So.
Have you all ever heard of the beaver reintroduction methods in Colorado and Wyoming area and Idaho?
No.
They used to drop them out of airplanes.
Beavers?
Really?
Mm-hmm. They put them in boxes attached to surplus World War II parachutes and throw them out the back of airplanes.
Oh, I'd love to see some video.
What were they doing this?
There's video. There is actual footage from it. The Fish and Wildlife Service recorded it in the late 40s.
We're getting a pretty good range of answers here. I think people heard us say it was farther than we think, and they're just guessing high numbers. Also, Paul Woosencraft, 3,500 yards is a very long way. Look that up in miles. All right, we'll give it a couple more seconds here. Get your answers in. Thanks everyone for tuning in tonight. This really has been, I think, a pretty good productive discussion. And thank you guys from RGS for joining us. Always good to hear from you guys and really appreciate your time. Yeah, I mean, again, I know there's a lot more questions out there that need to be answered, but this is I think it's really helpful to have these discussions and just to have people have kind of a forum to see what's happening within the organization. So a male beaver thrown out of the airplane was named Geronimo.
Yeah. The actual report that they submitted for the scientific research report they used, they did talk about how they named the one male beaver. He was their test beaver, so they had to throw him like 15 times to make sure that the boxes wouldn't kill the beavers.
The boxes would land.
Yeah, and he survived through all of that, so they chose a very cozy spot for him to drop him off eventually.
All right. We're cutting off the answers here at that comment. That's funny. So the answer is it was about a mile, which is 1,760 yards, is what they got out to before a bird dropped in the water. So I believe our winner was. There was one close. Who was it? I had 12.
It's Al Stewart, Ixnam.
Yeah, it's not Al Stewart. I haven't seen him chime in here tonight. So I know I said the closest without going over, but the reality is Travis Powers said 1,800 yards, which is pretty close to a mile. So I think that's the closest actually we're going to be able to get. There was a 1600 with KC. Maybe we'll do a concession prize, but I think we're going to actually go with Travis on this one at 1800 because that's pretty close to a mile. So yeah, they did it and they kept going. I don't know how many birds they went through, but they got out to a mile, and that's where birds started dropping in the water. Just
A little cool side note to this story. So there's four, there's a whole bunch. I think there's like 9 islands in the Beaver Archipelago. There's Beaver Island, there's High Island, there's Garden Island, Squaw Island, Whiskey Island, Trout Island, High Island, and Gull Island. None of the islands were indigenous or had an indigenous ruffed grouse population. So all the birds that are on those islands have all been transplanted. So Beaver Island was the first. High and Garden were the other two. And High and Garden were actually a control group, which was actually wild birds that were released on the island. And Dave and I can tell you that there are plenty of wild birds still flourishing on that island, even though there's not actually a whole lot of young growth forest on the island. But there's also almost zero ground predators on there. There's no raccoons, possums, skunks, red squirrels, any of that stuff on the island. Hog Island was actually released with captive birds. Now, we've always heard that ruffed grouse, really don't do well in captivity and are very hard to raise, and they don't actually survive. Well, a good friend of mine has actually went over and hunted Hog Island and found ruffed grouse over there. Now, that being said, there is a couple of areas that are less than 1 mile of flying distance that they could make it to, but I highly doubt that was the case. I think that some of those birds survived, again, because there was probably, limited to no, nest predation for the hens to be able to lay eggs. So kind of an interesting little side story there.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely, it's interesting how for habitat that had 0 birds natively that they've lasted this long and thrived with very non-traditional cover and what we look for. But it really does go to show too that the nest rating problem is bigger than I think most people realize. You can blame a lot of factors like disease and habitat and that, but the birds will survive if given the place to nest and successfully raise their young.
Yep.
So, all right. Well, we got our 2 winners. Maybe I'll see who is my next closest on that was 1250. I think 1250 is the next closest. Oh, 1400. 1400 at Dave Currency. So maybe Dave, why don't you throw me your email too? We'll send something out to you as well. But Travis, you're the winner on this one because that's pretty close. So anyway, anyone have any parting comments, thoughts, concerns that they want to let everyone know before we sign off here for the night?
Thank everyone for their time, their passion, their interest. Feel free to reach out to anyone on staff with any questions or comments that you have. Want to thank Brent and Pyke Gear for their continued support and giving us this platform to do this tonight. So thank you.
Well, thank you guys.
Thanks,
really
everyone.
Appreciate your guys' time. And all right, I think that's it. We'll say good night and
see you in a few months.
Hopefully, yep, we'll be back doing this again for sure. This is a good time, and hopefully we'll get some more people on here that can shed some light on what's happening with RGS and around the country. So thank you all the guys that joined on the live and for your commenting and just being a part of this. And we will talk to you soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.